Now, for another example of negative feedback, we are going to take a dive into blood sugar or blood glucose regulation. Now, again, as we said from the very first time, when we're looking at a chart that deals with homeostatic control or the homeostasis process, we always want to start from looking in the middle, because the middle tells us the body's zen or the body's equilibrium. And now that we're looking at glucose levels, this particular literature is saying that what is normal is 90 milligrams of sugar per 100 milliliters of blood. Now, that's fine, but you read other literatures that would argue and say that what is normal is a range between 60 milligrams per deciliter all the way to about 139. So anywhere above 40, yeah, you messed up. No, you didn't, but it's on the high side. Just let's know, it's on the high side. So it's very important that we keep our blood sugar very normal. Just like when we spoke of thermoregulation, we may not have gotten into the importance of why it was so important to keep the body at an optimal temperature, but it is. But when it comes to blood glucose, we don't want to enter a stage of being hypoglycemic, PO, meaning we have less blood glucose. Yeah, we're not going to be functioning. What's going to end up happening is that we will end up getting easily fatigued, lightheaded, nauseous. We may vomit. We may have feelings of weakness. And then, but we don't want to enter into a state of hyperglycemia, where our blood glucose levels are too high, because then we end up feeling extremely thirsty. We end up sometimes getting stomach pains. And in both cases, also, we end up peeing frequently. I feel like that was one of the main symptoms that has always stuck with me, because urine, I don't know, don't judge me. But I felt like that was the only thing that has ever really stuck with me when we talk about high blood sugar. And for some reason, I feel like I've seen this some time on the television, and it just stuck. But I don't think it had to do with blood glucose. I think it just had to do with a new bladder medication that I just wasn't paying attention to. I think I linked those two together. Yeah, that's what I did. Never mind. Let me digress. But in both situations, if we do not control our blood sugar, the immediate effects of that is something called diabetic coma, where the person isn't dead, but they're not responsive. And if this isn't treated immediately, this can be fatal. And then we talk about long-term, especially for diabetics, the increase of blood glucose in the blood can actually damage our blood vessels. And in the damaging of our blood vessels, and it impairs the blood vessels, and so prevents it from doing its job, we can then suffer from things like strokes and heart attacks. And, it just creates this slippery slope for us down the line, for us not only down the line, but also immediately. So there is need to maintain or control our blood glucose. But luckily, the body does such a good job. So let's talk about if we have a high blood glucose level. Now, that typically happens every time we eat. So every time you eat anything, your blood glucose level typically spikes, because glucose is extremely simple and extremely reactive. So what happens? Obviously, sugar is a chemical. So chemoreceptors are triggered. The chemoreceptors tell the brain, say, hey, we're tasting a little bit too sweet. Why don't we kind of dilute this, bring this sugary party a little bit down? We don't want to get all hyper. Okay. And then the brain says, all right, I got you guys. So it goes ahead and it has words with the pancreas. Now, there are two types of cells in the pancreas. Let's not get them confused. We have the beta cells and the alpha cells. Now, in the case where the blood glucose is high, we're going to talk about the beta cells. Now, I have not figured out a way to remember which is which, but beta has always been the cells that I'm used to seeing. So I just automatically associate high with beta. I don't know. You figure it out. Figure out how to associate it, or just go back to your text and consistently use it until it sticks with you. That's all there is to it. So if you don't remember right now, it's fine. But if you continue to stick to your text, you are going to get it. So you're going to learn the difference between the beta and the alpha. So the beta cell is triggered. The beta cell releases a hormone called insulin. And what insulin does, insulin acts as a key, right? And it opens cells. So it doesn't eat the glucose, or it doesn't digest, it doesn't break down the glucose at all. It doesn't do anything to the glucose. It opens the doors or the gateways to cells. So it opens cells up and say, hey, I heard you need to metabolize. You know, I heard you need to make some form of energy, ATP. I heard it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna supply you with your substrates or your materials or your reactants. And it opens the cells up and causes the cells to take in some of that glucose, which removes it from the blood. And then we do know from metabolism, our cells are going to use that glucose, break it down through the process of respiration to create ATP and to create and generate some energy. And it also will take the liver, the same insulin, open the liver up and cause the liver to store the glucose in a form called glycogen. Now, glycogen, it's less reactive and more stable than glucose, so it can be stored. And then our blood glucose level returns back to normal, hence it's negative feedback. I'm going to keep saying that because we're returning back to normal, or we're returning back to our set point. But let's say, for instance, you did not eat breakfast, you went out for a run or a hike or whatever, you just woke up and just skipped breakfast altogether. And then all of a sudden you're just like, I'm feeling a tiny bit lightheaded. I know that always happens to me when I decide to skip breakfast. I end up feeling lightheaded. And that's when I know that my blood glucose is running a little bit too low. But then, just like if the blood glucose levels are a little bit too high, the body works to fix it. The body also works to fix glucose levels that are too low to prevent you from being hypoglycemic. But how? No, I'll tell you how. So our chemoreceptor says, yeah, wow, we're a little bit too diluted. Now, where is the sugar for the party? So it tells the brain says, okay, I got you. The brain goes ahead and contacts the pancreas. But this time, it's specifically targeting the alpha cells because we do not want to release insulin for this situation. We want to release another hormone called glucagon. Yeah, I know sometimes it gets me kind of tripped up with glycogen, but glucagon is the name of the hormone. Glycogen is the name of the sugar store. So let's not mix up the two. Let's keep practicing until we get it. So glucagon is released by the alpha cells of the pancreas. And that glucagon, it goes to the liver, gets the liver to break down the glycogen and release glucose into the bloodstream and thus elevate the sugar levels in the blood and thus normalizing the blood sugar all over again. And that returns it, boom, to equilibrium, completing the cycle of the negative feedback.